Hey, everybody, welcome. I'm Sam LaPrade. You're joining us again. I'm so happy to see all of you here for the Capacity Building Institute monthly webinar, which is always a wonderful opportunity to get together and learn. I always learn so much from these webinars and the wonderful guests that we have joining us. And so you want to, hopefully you've got your favorite, maybe it's your favorite drink in front of you, maybe it's a coffee or a tea, or maybe for me, it's ginger ale. Whichever you have in front of you today, I'm hoping you can sit back and relax and learn lots today from our wonderful guests. We're going to be speaking with William in Montana soon, but I'd like to introduce you, if you already don't know, the glue that keeps us all together is Hannah Rockburn. Hannah, hi, Hannah, how are you?
Hi, Sam. I'm good.
Good. Hannah, can you take it away for us and give us an overview?
Hi everyone. Thank you. I'm so glad that you're able to join us today. For those that may not know me, my name is Hannah Rockburn, and I am a volunteer with Sustainable Capacity Solutions. I've been involved with the organization for a number of years, even before it was officially incorporated. Many of you may know me more from working as an operations manager with Capacity Building Institute and Eco Internships, which are now both a part of Sustainable Capacity Solutions. We were founded back in 2022, and SCS is dedicated to strengthening the backbone of Canada's environmental movement. As a network of programs, it provides connections and necessary capacity building resources for small grassroots organizations all across Canada. We have expanded the work of over 150 ENGOs across Canada through our different services and educational programming in areas such as financial management, fundraising strategies, administrative and HR support, as well as professional development training and coaching. And so our mission is to empower environmental nonprofits across Canada by providing the tools, resources, and the training that's needed to sustainably grow your operations and increasing the impact of your missions. It's to really fill that gap between your passion and the education needed to succeed in the programming that you want to do. Our programs are tailored to empower individuals, organizations at any stage of your journey, whether if you're just graduating university and getting into the field, or you're a seasoned leader and have been running an organization for a number of years. Our approach does focus on the six core capacity building themes, which you can see on our wheel here. So we tackle financial management, governance, volunteer engagement, coordination, communication, risk management, etc. Some of the training opportunities that we do have available right now. So remaining in 2025, we have our December webinar. So similar to tonight, our 1 hour webinar sessions that are free to come and learn. And we do record these and post them on our YouTube channel so you can share them with boards and use them as learning and training materials yourselves for your organizations. We have a special topic this year on Indigenous wellness. So we have Lana and Sherelle coming to join us from Rise Up in December that will be touching on this topic and explaining a little bit more about it and how it affects our organizations and how we should consider this within our culture and our organization. So it's definitely a webinar you don't want to miss. And if you haven't signed up yet, you can either scan the QR code or go to our website on the events page and sign up and register for next month's webinar. And I teased a little bit about this in the September webinar, but I am excited to officially announce that we do have a new training program that is meant for more senior leaders and organizations happening in 2026. This will be taking place between February and July next year. We do have limited spots available, so they will be 25 spots that will be free. So there is no charge to either the individual or the organization to take this training. It's primarily a self-directed online course, but what's really beneficial and powerful is that you do get free one-on-one coaching for your organization over this period of time to help you tackle a specific capacity building issue that might be happening with the organization that you want some help with. You can fill our interest form on our website. It's right on the homepage, or you can scan the QR code. We will reach out to you directly with more information on that training. And also just taking a moment to thank all of our partners and trainers. So we have amazing and fantastic trainers for both the course and the coaching section. So we have Sam, who's actually our host tonight. We have Rob Barnes. He has over 10 years of experience working with nonprofits and in nonprofits. Barb King, who is going to be one of our coaches for next year. She has over 20 years of extensive management experience. She was the executive director for Watersheds Canada for a number of years. So she will be one of our coaches next year. We also have Alex Keenan, who is a communication specialist. If you've seen at any of our previous webinars, she has been on a number of those as well. Dwayne Taylor, he kind of heads and helps with our diversity, equity, and inclusion training. And he has over 10 years experience in the sector. And then we also have Christina, who has founded a majority of these programs. She is the president of the Sustainable Capacity Foundation. She has over 20 years of experience, both as an executive director and as a founder and foundation that gives grants. So you would have seen her many a times in these webinars as well. And she will be serving as a coach for next year's program. And then amongst many other organizations and partners that we have put together resources in our training. So just thanking them all for providing the materials for all of you to use. Without them, we would not be able to run the training that we do. We also just always ask you to connect with us. So if you had any inquiries, you can email us directly at info@sustainablecapacity.ca. Once again, you can check out our website. I'll put it in the chat later as well. We have our events. We have any upcoming programming, past program. You can check all that out on the website. As mentioned, we have our next webinar on December 16th, 4 to 5. Highly recommend registering for that. And then if you are interested in any of our past webinars, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel or find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. We also do have an occasional newsletter that gets sent out with some updates as well as reminders of these webinars. I encourage you to subscribe to the newsletter to keep updated on everything that's going on, especially what's upcoming in 2026. So with that, I won't take any more of our guest speakers' time, and I'll pass it back over to Sam to lead our webinar tonight.
Well, thank you so much, Annie. You always do a lovely job. It's wonderful to spend time with everyone today. I'm so excited to introduce our two guests today. There she is, Montana Burgess. Hi, Montana. How are you? Thanks for being here with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Fantastic. And we've invited William Van Geest as well. Hello, William. How are you?
I'm well, Sam. How are you?
Good. And of course, William's coming to us from Ecology Ottawa. William, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I am executive director with Ecology Ottawa. I've been with the organization for 3 years, started as program coordinator working on our tree giveaways, just sharing native trees with folks across the city, and have worked on a variety of our programs since that time. I'm unlike Montana, who is a bit of a titan and an institution in this sort of work. I don't have a massive formal experience in ENGO work. I was doing academic work. That was my formal work prior to this work with Ecology Ottawa. Although, as I kind of look back at my experience with engagement organizing, I realized actually I've been doing that for quite a while, just as I say, less formally. So if anyone has questions about the history of especially 18th century German music theory, I'm happy to answer them, but more likely we should stick with engagement organizing for today.
Okay, although you've piqued my interest for sure, absolutely. And I think Montana's too. Montana, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I know nothing about 18th century German, whatever you said, but love that. Yeah, my name is Montana Burgess. I use she, her, they pronouns. I'm based in Roslyn, British Columbia, on the land of the Sinixt people who are not extinct, despite what our federal government says. And I've been in the nonprofit world for almost 20 years now in climate and environmental. I started off my career in Ottawa working at Climate Action Network Canada, and then started working for their international sister organization, Climate Action Network International. And I did I was the program, what was my name? What was my title? Operations director, something like that. And so I worked around all the UN international climate change stuff. Like right now, there's the COP happening in Brazil. I used to go to all those and coordinate our members, civil society, working together, try to have everybody's work be more synergistic. And I'm glad people are doing that. It's important. We need that. I believe in multilateralism. But I got really tired of not seeing my efforts be anything tangible on the ground. So when I moved to the region I live in now, almost 15 years ago, I started looking for how I could get involved locally and make a difference like in my backyard. And so I found the organization, the West Kootenay Eco Society, which I started volunteering for. And I was also volunteering for the Dogwood Initiative. And that's when I learned this framework of distributed leadership, engagement organizing, snowflake model, whatever we want to call it. And we started winning, like winning a lot where I lived. And then I became staff at the West Kootenay Eco Society and became the executive director. And I doubled down and took it like to the next level and integrated something called deep canvassing from other social movements to change people's hearts and minds on energy policy locally. And we kept winning, and it was really effective and fun. And yeah, I built a lot of relationships, and I just left that role in May. And now I run my own consultancy, Mountaintop Strategies, where I'm trying to help groups level up their grassroots organizing.
There's so much in what you just said, and I know I saw William's eyes sort of light up a few times too. I think there's so much in there, Montana. Let's start there. Let's start with defining engagement organizing, because I heard relationships, I heard it's fun, I heard winning, I heard lots of different things. Let's define it and let's start there.
Sure. Well, the model I learned from is articulated by Marshall Ganz, and he didn't invent it, but he articulated, and it's from all these different social movements over hundreds of years. He worked with the United Farmers in California, trying to help them have rights to better employment. It comes from the Cesar Chavez lineage of organizing, and some of the defining features are putting relationships at the center of how we work instead of tasks. And the theory goes, if we prioritize relationships and making sure people are connected and have choice in what they're doing, and making sure that they are all interdependent with each other and not just like accountable to us as the organizer, then we can grow and we can build and we can be bigger and we can take on more and absorb more people as they come in and have what we call distributed leadership. So it's not just like one person making all the choices. And the way we grow through this model is by snowflaking our team structure, which means you have your people doing things and they each have a sustainable number of relationships of people they're checking in with. And so as new people come in, the people on the outside, they can then bring in more people and more relationships. And so it can grow to this beautiful snowflake is the idea. So that's how I would define engagement organizing.
Yeah, wonderful. And for those that are my vintage, you might remember a commercial that was, I told two people, and then I told two people, and then she told two people. It feels very much like that as well, in terms of engaging. William, give me a sense of when and you were saying that, you've done this work maybe a little bit more informally than Montana, but give us a sense of sort of your experience early on with this type of work.
Yeah, it's happened in a few different situations over time. I think the most obvious place that it happened was actually in the academic setting that I mentioned earlier. This was at the University of Michigan, and we saw the need for people power, to have a voice as graduate students, in the department in the graduate school. And we thought, there were a couple different kind of categories of activities that we could benefit from, and having a kind of formally recognized structure that would bring people together and then relay our concerns to the administration. And, kind of one thing led to another. I think one of the signs of engagement organizing success is it catches on, it snowballs. You realize you've kind of tapped something. And so this turned into an entire society, kind of connecting multiple departments. Um, a constitution that, was necessary for the organization. And yeah, a society that continues now, I don't know, 10 years later, just because a couple of us kind of got together and then started bringing in more people on board and let them, like Montana was saying, have choice, have agency,
Mhm.
pursue the areas of concern for them, and run with it. So that was one. I also was doing advocacy in sustainable transportation in Ann Arbor, where I was, and I can talk about that as well. But that was really kind of plugging myself into an existing organization in that case, rather than founding, which I think is like the first step that folks should take. Find out who's already doing the work. And there too, plugged myself into a gap that I perceived and was given, on the other side, kind of given the agency that I needed to apply the expertise that I had and the experience that I had. And that really kind of propelled me into municipal level advocacy in general, and watching how city councils operate and trying to get involved there. That really got me hooked on municipal affairs in general, and that led in a quite clear way to my current work with Ecology Ottawa.
Beautifully said. And when we think, and there may be somebody that's on the line right now that thinking, well, how does this differ from traditional outreach? And I've heard a few things like maybe it's the structure, maybe it's the relationship piece, because so often it's, someone's got an objective, but they're wanting to bring someone on board for time, talent, or treasure, but they're not wanting to really engage them. Is that part of it, Montana?
Yeah, I think another kind of key piece and a way to say it is like you're trying to organize yourself out of a job in
Oh,
engagement organizing, where it doesn't mean you don't have roles. There's infinite roles to do in trying to, win things, especially in
mhm.
the environmental crises we face. But it's about like helping people do the things for themselves instead of you doing it for them. So I would say engagement organizing excludes advocacy because advocacy is speaking on behalf of people. So we are helping people speak
Mm.
for themselves. And so if you need to have meetings with your MP to like explain a thing, you don't do them. You organize your constituency, your people to have the
Mhm.
skills and resources to go do it on behalf of themselves.
I love that. And Montana earlier spoke about sort of changing people's hearts and minds, which I love that phrase as well, William. And I think when people do get involved and they present themselves to their local councillor, mayor, MPP, MP, and they do put themselves out that way, or they're organizing a group of them, it's that ownership too, right? Which can feel really good for people.
Yeah, absolutely. There's nothing like having a job to do to bring you into a movement, right?
Yeah.
Um, to feel kind of part of a group. I actually moved to Ottawa at the very beginning of the pandemic in August 2020, and of course, like that's not a great time to move to a city from a social standpoint. I got involved. Well, actually, as a bit of a dig to my current organization, I tried to get involved with Ecology Ottawa, and they didn't have room for me at the moment, and so I got involved with Bike Ottawa, and to this day, those folks remain my friends, which I think speaks to the people aspect. Like, we have a tendency of thinking of folks. I think of this speaks to the traditional organizing model as like kind of tools that we from the top. Um, you know machinate, try to do our
Mhm.
bidding. And that is just not engagement organizing. Engagement organizing is really saying, oh, what, as Montana is saying, what are you interested in doing? How can I help you do it?
Mhm.
And it treats people as people. And, there's a really strong and essential, I think, social aspect to it. So yeah, I think the other thing I wanted to say about that is once you do have that task, once that initial step into the cause, um, you start noticing impact. And
Mhm.
what I have observed in all my engagement organizing is that is really a critical piece for people's continuing with a particular group or a particular cause is, are they actually seeing an impact from the work that they're doing? And if they do, they'll come back for more and they'll, move along that ladder of engagement or pyramid of engagement, depending on your model. So yeah, really getting people, owned, feeling ownership and feeling
Mhm.
agency in the group and in the cause.
Yeah, really well said. And all I kept thinking, Montana, is through that is how do we create sustainability in that? Because it can be easy to kind of rally people for a short period of time, but how do you keep them coming back, especially with climate change, where yes, every 3 or 4 years we might have an election and we want to get all rallied up, but how do we keep them maybe interested and engaged and creating that bigger snowflake, if you will, over time, so that it's not stop and start all the time.
Well, that's like literally the billion-dollar question. So I don't have the answer, but some of the
Right.
components I think that are important is as you're designing campaigns, you want to be clear on what is your mountaintop goal, which is the name, like why I named my thing the thing. You want to
Mm-hmm.
know like what is the big thing you're fighting for that's going to take some time. And to get there, what are your nested goals? What are the different wins and components you can get that build towards that win? So, for example, if you want there to be net zero emissions in Canada by 2050, pretend that's what your goal is within your scope of influence, like if you live in Saskatoon and you're trying to make a difference in your backyard, what are the things you can achieve in your community if you do organizing to get that? Maybe you want a municipal 100% renewable energy goal. Maybe you want an institution there to do something around net zero. So there's different pieces you got to break down. And you by having these different pieces, it makes it manageable, it makes it measurable, and you can like see wins and build on the success. Or if you lose, you can learn from it and apply to the next one. So I think having like these nested goals that are clear and achievable are important for strategy. I think you want to invest heavily in leaders that you are building relationships with. So as you're giving people more responsibility and like testing if they can do it, to give them more and more, the people that can do it, we want to really double down our support of and help them continue to grow. Because as we go along on these long-term campaigns, which is ultimately what we have to do in any kind of like environmental the climate crisis. It's not going to be a 10-year thing. This is like a 100-year thing or more. So
Mm-hmm.
we need to have people be involved for their life and have them have the skills and support. And if they're showing leadership, we want to invest in that. If people need to take breaks, we want to let them take breaks and support them to take breaks and then support them to come back, much like taking a sabbatical or something. That's okay. So having it all be like structured and not leaving things unsaid, I think is really important to keep people involved in that longer term way while taking those nested goals, campaign goals, and building your wins off those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, very, very important to think about. And I think too, and you mentioned something there in terms of correcting the course. How do you know, William, when maybe it's off course and you're not having those wins that we spoke about at the top of our time together today? And how do you know how to when the right time is to shift?
You need to always be keeping your antennas out, whether that's kind of to yourself in your own kind of proximity to the burnout brink, or in conversations with folks. Just regular check-ins and not rushed check-ins with folks. The folks around you are your best resource, actually. And they have a good handle on their world and themselves. I guess I personally think very much along the lines of an ecosystem, and that not only with regard to our own organization and filling in gaps and that sort of thing, but also in connection with other organizations, and taking on only what we can and only what we should. And so, Montana kind of spoke to, identifying your mountaintop, right? Like your goal. I think really being clear about your goal and choosing a good goal in your own ecosystem in the first place does a lot in terms of directing what you should and shouldn't take on and how you relate to other organizations and can kind of break up the work. But I think having ecosystem mentality really ensures that sustainability and enables you to identify when you're overextending yourself and when you're straying from sustainability. And I think like sustainability is really key to the model. I think it's partly the output, but I think that's kind of the center of when you're doing things right, it is sustainable even during a growth period.
Hmm. And it's interesting because, today is all about the power of people, Montana. Give us a sense of some of those strategies that are people powered that have worked for you.
Well, our big campaign we ran while I was at Neighbors United, formerly the West Kootenay Eco Society, was we were trying to, it was coming out of 2015, which this is wild that was 10 years ago now. But I was working both jobs at that time. I was working for Climate Action Network International and the local organization. And what I saw coming out of the Paris Agreement at the UN process was that the big win across the globe was there was this narrative that this was the age of renewable energy. This was the end of the fossil fuel era. And that frame had legs everywhere, countries across the world, my colleagues were sharing. So I was like, what can we do in our own backyard that picks up off of that win and takes it forward? And so we were like, we could try to organize communities in our region to make a commitment to 100% renewable energy across all community energy uses. So, like transportation, heating, cooling, and buildings, waste management, electricity. Um, and we could get municipalities to pledge to do this through the municipal process. And we could organize community members to support them so they could have the political will or frankly liability if they didn't do it. And so we tested this a little bit in the community and people were excited about it. It felt very solution forward, very positive, and doable. So we started going out and talking to people at community events, on street corners, and asking them if they supported 100% renewable energy and wanted this for their community. And we did a lot of story sharing about what was at stake for us in the climate crisis, and helped build rapport and help build relationships with people and then get them signed on. So we had like a petition to collect their information and could count them. And then we would try to get them to volunteer and come do more of this. And as we in each community, as we found more and more people, we had to structure them into teams. And then we were able to spread out to new communities as well. So over the period of, we started doing that organizing in 2016, and our last big kind of end to that campaign with the last municipality we made effort to get on board was 2022. So it was 6 years. And we got 15 municipalities on board, and this is like rural small town, right? It's pretty important from a storytelling perspective. This isn't like a progressive urban area that you would expect. And we did that by getting, anywhere from like 10% to a third of the residents in the entire community signed on to a petition. And our theory of change was if enough of their residents want this, they're going to have to do it, or it's going to be a problem for them.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the condition we created, and we built a lot of leadership. And in places where it got really tough, like this one town Trail, British Columbia, which has a smelter in the downtown of the community, and it was a community built around lead and zinc smelting. People were really unsure because this was that jobs versus environment thing we see over and over in frontline communities. And most people were on the fence. They weren't sure if they wanted it. They were scared of what it would mean for their livelihood and their community. So that's where we actually looked to this deep canvassing model from the States and went and we knocked on or called every door, every person in town, and tried to have this deep conversation following a specific methodology. And 1 in 3 people changed their minds by following the methodology, and a ton of script iteration to get us there. And yeah, we got the city to agree to this in 2022. And that was like a hard fought one because we had to change a narrative in the community. We couldn't just find our supporters, we had to change minds. But really proud of that work and how we scaled it out and how it was like doing our part in a rural small town and changing the narrative of what's possible in Canada.
Wow, that's really inspiring. That's wonderful. And William, I know you picked up, I'm sure you picked up on the storytelling piece. How have you integrated that storytelling piece in your work?
Yeah, that's critical. According to the kind of Marshall Ganz model that Montana mentioned earlier, um, story is, plays a kind of critical role in terms of identifying what we're doing in a given situation, where we're coming from, and then bringing other folks on board and kind of it's almost like giving someone a disease. You want to kind of infect them with the bug that is plaguing you in terms of, no, this needs to be done. This is an important cause. Even insofar as you're trying to get, where they're coming from in the cause as well. So in a kind of very practical sense, the way that we have kind of acknowledged the importance of story in our own work and kind of practiced that importance is by doing what Marshall Ganz calls the story of self, which is just a kind of explanation via story of these things. What brings me to the work that I'm doing? What brings me to this particular issue? And so we would just share it with the team, and it's a great way to get to know each other. It's a great way to practice for when you are asked that question kind of out in the wild. And yeah, it's a really important skill. And even, to rehearse to yourself, well, actually, what am I doing this for? Why am I here?
Mhm.
So yeah, and then when we are at a community event, then when I am giving a presentation to an organization, say, that's clear to me, and that is guiding my what I'm saying and my actions.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I guess a critical point to that exercise that Marshall Ganz makes is the role of emotion, right? That's kind of what the medium say of the transmission of the virus. I should probably get a better analogy actually for this than virus, but um, you know, you need to provoke in the other person, a sort of emotion that will make them kind of ready to connect along those lines. It's not just a mere recounting of facts, say. And we know the importance of emotion, in terms of the type of deep canvassing that Montana is talking about. Facts don't change people as much as feelings do. So yeah, story really does play an integral role in at least the Gantsian version of engagement organizing.
Mhm. And it's interesting because, someone might be sort of listening, watching us right now and thinking, okay, well, it's easy for Montana and William because they've got sort of this built-in groups that they know, or they might, um, they might feel like you've got a leg up on many. But in terms of starting, just if someone's got an idea and they want to start something, Montana, where are we sending them? How are we asking them to start?
Well, I think the first question you have to ask yourself is who are my people? And when you're thinking about who are your people, you're thinking about who will do something because I asked them to do it because we have a strong relationship and who also cares about this problem. So you can literally make your list of who are my people that I could engage on this problem. And then, like William was just saying, what is the story? Why does this matter to me? Why should it matter to them? Why is it happening now? So, for example, in all the climate work I do, the reason I do it is I have a perfectly sweet 8-year-old, my daughter Barstow, and when she was 2 years old, she had a cold, and I was trying to put her to bed, and she was really fussy, not going to bed, and then I noticed her breathing was very, very shallow. Um, and I lived rurally at the time. And I started getting worried. So I called 911 and explained to them what was going on. And they're like, yeah, this sounds really bad. We're going to send an ambulance. And so I held her. She was really upset, fussy for half an hour while the ambulance got to me because I live early. And in that time, I had this feeling like I have one job in this world. It's to keep my kid alive. And I'm scared right now. I'm scared I'm not going to be able to do this because her breathing is so sketchy. The ambulance gets there, they measure her oxygen, and they're like, oh, yeah, we need to get her on oxygen. So they put her on the mask and we go to the hospital. She gets treated and she's fine. It turns out she has asthma and it acts up when she gets a cold and other things. So she's okay. We know how to manage it. But I live in British Columbia. And when I grew up in Kamloops in the 80s and 90s, it's a dry place for those who have been there. It's got rattlesnakes, it's cactus, it's a grassland, it's meant to burn. And there was only a handful of days where the sun was glowing pink and it was like too smoky to go outside and play. And now I live in a place that's the West Coodies, it's wet, it's the inland temperate rainforest. It's not supposed to be dry, and it's very dry from climate change. And it's so smoky every summer. It's like 6 weeks of smoke. And I'm terrified to let her outside. There was a kid a couple years ago in 100 Mile House who died from an asthma attack, and it wasn't even that smoky out. So my fear is real, and I've done things like gone to Canadian Tire to get a air filter and like kind of argued with someone over the last good one and got it and was like a little bit wacko about it because I was just so scared about my child and what was at stake for her. And I also have like this remorse that she doesn't get to have a childhood like I had. And so that's why I organize in whatever way I can to try to give her a chance to be able to breathe in the future and all the other little kids like her that they didn't cause this. It's not their fault and they deserve to do it. So by telling that kind of story, I tell my personal stakes, my story of self. I talk about like how I need other people to do it with me because I can't do it alone because it's climate change. And then I'll transition to talk about it in whatever the campaign I'm working on, why the solution, the campaign, can make a difference in it. And so telling the story, you can bring more people together and then you can figure out together, like, what is your theory of change? What is the way you can make change? If you need to get your local government to pass a policy as part of this complex problem of climate change, like, how can we do that together? You figure that out, and then you structure yourselves and you bring in more people and you keep structuring, and then you take action together and you repeat, repeat, repeat. And so those are like the key 5 components. Storytelling, building relationships, strategy, structure, and taking action together. And yeah, you start by looking for your people and sharing vulnerably about what's really at stake for you.
Oh, it's so much in what you said really touched my heart. I'm an asthmatic as well, so from that perspective, and I was as a child, and it's very hard to express being an asthmatic as a child. So thank you for sharing that. But I think um, the other part that's really key is that vulnerability piece, and not everybody is comfortable sort of sharing their own experiences. William, how important is that? I mean, I think back to the days of cavemen and cavewomen where we're writing on the walls to tell the stories, and now we've got all these different ways to tell stories. But how key is it for you and your organization and your goals to tell those stories as well?
Yeah, it's key. I mean, I think people know like when they're being conned, even if that conning is for a good cause, say, right? I mean, one of the things that drives me nuts is the fundraising correspondence that we get, and like everyone is, like hysterical and follows the same structure or whatever, right? One thing that I've super appreciated in this line of work is that you can just be yourself and talk about the very real fears that you experience, the very real gratitude of the community that you're working with, the joys that you experience when there are wins, even if those aren't, say, policy wins or tangible things, even like kind of social wins, say, coming together, strengthening as a movement, say, or strengthening as a group. Um, all of these things, they all come very naturally. The things that, should be kind of the normal part of the nonprofit industrial complex, simply being upfront about how you're actually doing takes care of all of that, because these are all very real things. So it's a very great place. If you take an engagement organizing approach, it's a great place to be because all you need to be is vulnerable. That's the best way to be. And I think that's where people will themselves feel free to be vulnerable and address their own very real fears, and take that on in whatever direction that they will. Yeah, it's because it's such a people-centered approach, that vulnerability is key and is super productive, super generative. Um, I will say too, I think, that aspect of engagement organizing, that vulnerability, is very relevant to ENGO work, in particular climate work in general, because we've seen the effects of climate change, and they're terrible and they're diverse. Whether it's someone like Montana's child suffering with asthma, or whether it's flooding, whether it's the dangers of extreme heat, on and on and on and on. And so, yeah, having a place to receive that vulnerability and talk about it together, share the emotions of it, and then work in very meaningful ways. That's just a great place to be.
Yeah, beautifully said. I wanted to just chat with all of our participants today. I'm ready for your questions. I'm happy to pose them to our great guests today, William and Montana. So feel free to throw them in the Q&A there. And thanks, Hannah, for reminding us about that. I'll continue to ask some questions because I could keep here another hour easily. But we have about just under 20 minutes left, so we'll make sure to ask as many great questions as we can. But certainly encourage those participants, if you've got something burning you want to ask today, then that is definitely the opportunity. Let me ask you, Montana, when it comes to that transitioning to distributed leadership, the micromanager in me already is breaking out in a bit of a cold sweat that it's not going to be perfect. And I'm not saying I'm perfect at all, but I think that's one of the fears when people sort of let things go, that maybe it's not going to be said in a way that you would say it, or someone's going to approach something in a different way. How do you get over that?
Well, I'm similar. So I don't know if you get over it, but you can build in safeguards to make
Yeah,
it work better. So I think
yeah.
having really robust training programs as part of your organizing practice is really important, because you don't want to send people out into the wild with no real formal organizer skills and then have them do like these huge big things. You want to build them up incrementally and make it manageable and make it not scary. And, if they're representing an organization, especially, there are some lines, right? So there are things that people can't do sometimes, right? They can't go say whatever if they're representing an organization. So you have to be clear on expectations,
Right.
and things like job descriptions, even if it's a volunteer, are really helpful. It doesn't have to be over the top, but helping people know what they're responsible for and accountable for, and how you're going to support them, and how there can be that mutual accountability is so key. Um, Having everyone be really clear about what your team's purpose is, what are you trying to achieve together, making sure they're bought in. What are the norms around how you communicate together in team spaces when you're not together, when you're out in the wild recruiting other people, talking to people with decision-making power. So I think, yeah, like ongoing training and coaching to help people build up their leadership skills and be really competent organizers and leaders that are able to like execute the parts that they're responsible for, I think is the way to do it. And it's ongoing, it's never done. Like,
Right.
in your jobs, it's the same. If you're a manager, like you're
Sure.
always practicing letting go and letting people have autonomy, but also helping keep the quality of their work high and help them meet their deliverables. So it's the same thing. And I think with volunteers, we're often like, "Ooh, I can't ask too much." And we have to ask for what we need. And if they say no, we try to understand why and respect it. But we have to say the things. We can't left things unsaid. That's only fair to the people we're organizing and only fair to our campaigns.
Right. Yeah. Lots in there for sure. And when we think about all of the the and you just spoke about it, that onboarding a little bit, that training piece, the pathways to get there. William, what are some of your experiences in terms of those elements of the work?
Yeah, I sometimes feel a little bit I don't know if it's bureaucratic, but when it comes to say an onboarding guide or say a manual to a particular process in our work, if it comes up enough, it makes sense to if a particular issue comes up enough, um, use the opportunity to develop a manual. Just because our management time is slim. And if we can, give someone a guide to say, "Hey, look, this is everything you need to know. Just walk through the steps. Let us know if there's anything missing." That saves us a lot of time and serves as a reference for folks. So we have, like, again, I feel like a little bit uncomfortable at the number of guides that we have for the processes across the organization, but they end up being handy. A former colleague of mine also actually added that to the task list of interns as well to say, actually, we don't have a guide for that, and that would be useful. Can you make one? So yeah, just having that set of resources for folks so that you're not kind of reinventing the wheel every time, and so that they can, study particular tasks at a speed that works for them, and they can refer back to it. I think that's really useful. I have been fortunate to have team members who have a similar kind of inclination to really, set folks up in the same way. So, I have help. It's excellent.
Team effort all around. When I think about this kind of work as well, that accountability, the measuring the success, the communication systems, all of that, to know when you're winning, Montana, give us a sense of those elements as well. When do we sort of know, and how do we share that accountability as well with the teams?
That's a great question. I think it's unique to every organization. There isn't like a one size fits all. But if we want to grow and we need big scale, which we usually do to win these like big things we're talking about, it's not usually just 10 people. You need to be able to monitor and track. So, like, speaking of specific tools, you can be as fancy as investing in like CRMs that you pay for and they like range in price and support, and you can spend a ton of money, or you can be as basic as just using like a spreadsheet in Excel or something. And honestly, I'm a big fan of the like build your own spreadsheet in Excel because it's fast and you can like just start. And then as you're able to bring in more resources, like if you're a big political campaign in the US, like the Obama campaign, great, invest in your big tech system. But, for many of us in like rural organizing, maybe we can just do an Excel sheet. But I think this isn't exactly what you're asking, but I think some of the metrics you want to track are your people. So, who you're recruiting, what's happening as they come in, what kind of actions are they taking, what kind of leadership are they taking? And there's all sorts of ways you can do that. You can like qualitatively do it. You can quantify it and assign like numbers and definitions and then like adjust their ratings. You want to track like every event, who's showing up. So you always want to have basic things like a sign-in sheet to know who's coming to your things. Or if you're out in the world canvassing, like you want something you can collect people on that support the thing you're doing and get their information. And of course, not share it and not break any like rules, but keep it private and keep it safe and use it. And you want to develop basically a supporter journey where you want to take people on a journey with you after your initial point of contact and try to get them to take more actions, try to take them into volunteering and up this like web of engagement, and through it become donors, all the things we need to win our campaigns. And it's going to ebb and flow. So being able to track it, measure it is really the like unsexy part of this work. And then, usually you're winning if you have your policy passed or not, because it's usually all about making a thing change in terms of a systems change. So that part's like the easy part, the monitoring your people, figuring out what everyone's doing, what kind of support everyone needs, and who are your people in what categories anytime is the complicated thing. but you can do it. It just takes some like thinking and planning and adapting.
For sure. It reminds me of fundraising, right? I mean, it's the same sort of thing, tracking and inspiring people to keep going. And engagement organizing, what are some resources, William, that you may suggest? I'm going to ask Madison the same question, but resources, I always love when we have an opportunity today to leave people with something they can take with them today. Where are we sending people? You've referenced a few a few different people today that would be great resources, but where are we sending people?
Yeah, the Marshall Ganz guide, I think it's called People Power Change. That is a really accessible, not overly long, but still relatively comprehensive guide. That's just an excellent one. I think Nature Canada also has a kind of digest version of it. Um, at the same time, I would say people already doing this work are really excellent resources. And also like a little bit of trial and error. I think a lot of engagement organizing is quite intuitive if you've got a kind of basic set of values, whether, that's kind of privileging people and relationships or prioritizing sustainability, not being beholden to perfectionism or overly dedicated to a cause. Um, I think a lot of the engagement organizing principles kind of fall out of holding those values. And yeah, you do kind of take some missteps from time to time, but even those are learning opportunities. And so, I found those two guys that I mentioned, really excellent kind of reminders. Even they affirm what you already knew and already found out, or
Mhm.
articulate those in really beneficial ways. So yeah, I think there's kind of a range depending on people's learning styles, depending on their own journeys in this sort of work.
Hmm. And how do we engage young people, Montana? Because I feel in many cases it's, this is the planet we're leaving for young people. I think about my daughter who's 17, who's got more energy than her older mother. And so how do we engage younger people?
Well, it turns out I'm not young anymore, so I might not be the right person to ask. It's weird how time does that, but um, I mean, I think it's all the same principles, right? It's about who are your people, what do they care about, and telling stories. And young people are our people. We all have young people in our lives, no matter what age we are. And I think just trying to understand, like, do they see the same thing that you see as a problem? Really trying to hear them and meet them where they're at. I think the big thing to be aware of in the organizing I've done is like if your strategy is to focus on recruiting um, people in university or college, they often are quite transient and they will move on. And yeah, so I'd say that's a hard demographic to organize for non like university or college campus-based campaigns. Not impossible. We've had amazing organizers from that demographic, but it's because of the transient nature and that like transient time, it's harder to find like people that are going to stay. High school, we've had a lot of success recruiting from high school kids in like grade 10, 11, 12 who are, a little bit more mature, thinking about the world beyond their school and wanting to get involved with something, but they're still place-based. They still have the support of their families. So yeah, I think just the same principles. And maybe just to add to the resource list that William shared. Um, yeah, Organize BC, which was an organization that doesn't exist anymore, but they put together a version of Gantz's teachings in their version of the manual, People Power Change. So that's probably available somewhere online. I know I have one in my digital archives. The Midwest Academy is a big training institute that's like articulated this stuff in manual form as well, and that's based out of the US. And then there's lots of folks that do the trainings, obviously, like the Capacity Building Institute, like all of us on this call. So there's lots of
Right.
people that can help actually guide you through the material because getting a guide is one thing, but interacting with it in a training format, for me, that's how I learn. So that's like what I try to share with people.
Okay, and thanks for coming back to the resources. I did want to get that input from you. We do have a wonderful question here from an anonymous attendee today. Have you any opinions about digital tools such as Discord for organizing and recruiting communities of purpose? I'll start, William, with your thoughts on that, and happy to get Montana's input as well.
Yeah, digital tools are great. They're also tools, and any tool has a beneficial use or a set of beneficial uses and a set of non-beneficial uses. I myself have not used Discord. I know a couple groups in town rely on it quite a bit. One I can think of is Strong Towns, Ottawa. That's in this neck of the woods. I think it's also possible to, even as tools like Discord are really helpful to bring people together, facilitate discussions, do some strategizing. They can also have the effect of creating an echo chamber, or, even as they connect within a community, they disconnect folks from other communities. So I think, again, as with any tool, a person or an organization needs to just go into choices about technology thoughtfully, being clear about what your objectives are and whether the tool actually gets them there. Yeah, it's really, back to kind of the conversation about a CRM versus a spreadsheet. I think it's easy to try to solve everything all at once, to get into that temptation and just get absolutely bogged down. And I think, very often in our work at Ecology Ottawa, there are two stages of a solution. One is, what do we need to, head off some problems today, and what larger long-term, solution do we have that we're going to leave to January? Everything long-term we leave to January, and then when January comes, then the month just goes by in a heartbeat. So yeah, I also am a little bit cautious with questions about taking on technology, that if it fails, you're really pulling the wind out of a whole bunch of people's sails. So one thing that I really like about engagement organizing is that it's very local, it's very personal, and I wouldn't want technology choices to take away from that. In an effort to being unifying and totalizing, you lose that personal and that very local aspect to it.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Montana, do you have anything to add regarding Discord or any of those tools?
Yeah, I think like similar to what William said, I think the main thing is like technology is changing so fast, so the best practices are always changing. And I think it's kind of six of one, half a dozen another. It's what are your preferences? What are your goals? What are you trying to do and match the technology for it? But like, do not let the perfect get in the way of doing something. I think the best campaigns I've seen, especially like I come from the small town, rural community, suburban organizing places, and you're always blending offline organizing, which is in-person organizing, and online organizing. Like you're bringing people in, you're finding people through online, then you need to get them to do something real in the world. And then when they do something real in the world, you need to get them to like also communicate in some way online between things. So it's this constant mesh of online to offline organizing. And for those working in the climate sphere, another resource and a webinar on this, the Climate Advocacy Lab based in the US. It's open to membership by Canadians too. They have a couple really cool trainings that influence the way I organize a lot on offline to online organizing. So you can sign up for free to become a member and access those archives of trainings.
Oh, that's fantastic. I've learned so much today. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of our participants today. And of course, to the wonderful Hannah Rockburn. Learned lots today from Montana and William. And I'm hoping to see everybody in December for our next webinar. Hannah will make sure to share all that. And with that, thank you again. And in the words of Montana, we're going to send you out into the wild now. Thank you so much, everyone. It's been a pleasure. I'm Sam LaPrette.